My name is Aubrey, and at 28, I never imagined a simple family barbecue would end with me homeless in my own parents' eyes. When my mom hollered at me to get the hell out and never darken their door again, I actually took her at her word. What she had no clue about was that I'd been footing their medical bills for 4 long years, shelling out $3,000 a month to keep Dad's cancer treatments going without a hitch. The sheer disbelief on Dad's face when the hospital notice hit their mailbox weeks later, that's a memory that'll haunt me forever. And before we get back to the story, would you be kind enough to give this video a like? You know, every single like means a lot to me. It's the kind of encouragement that keeps me creating and bringing you even better stories tomorrow. Growing up in the Larson house in that sleepy Cleveland suburb felt like navigating a minefield blindfolded. One wrong step, and boom, everything exploded. Mom, Diane, had these sky-high expectations that always seemed rigged for me to trip over. From as far back as I can remember, she was the judge and jury, dishing out verdicts on every little thing I did. Dad, Tom, he was the guy who tried to keep the peace, sneaking into my room after Mom's latest rant with a soft, "Hang in there, kiddo," and maybe a hug if she wasn't around. But he never really stood up to her. He just smoothed the edges until the next sharp corner came along. Our family wasn't big, just Mom, Dad, my older brother Caleb, who's 33 now, and me. Caleb got out early, heading off to Chicago for a sales job right after high school and hardly ever looking back. He left me holding the bag as the youngest, soaking up all of Mom's pent-up disappointments like a sponge that never dried out. I remember this one time when I was about 8. I came home from school buzzing because I'd won the spelling bee. I rushed in, trophy in hand, expecting at least a smile. Mom glanced at it, then said, "That's nice, but Caleb won the regional one at your age. Did you even practice the hard words?" My stomach dropped, that shiny little cup suddenly feeling like lead. Why wasn't good enough ever just good? I wondered, staring at my shoes, feeling that familiar knot twist tighter. It started small, those criticisms, but they built up like storm clouds. At first, it was stuff like my clothes. "That shirt's too baggy, Aubrey. It makes you look sloppy." I'd change outfits 3 times before school, hoping to dodge the bullet. Then it ramped up to my friends. I brought home my best buddy from 3rd grade, Sarah, who had this wild curly hair and loved climbing trees. Mom pulled me aside after and whispered, "She's a bit rough around the edges, don't you think? You should hang out with girls who have more class." I felt my cheeks burn, defending Sarah in my head but saying nothing out loud. By middle school, the hits got harder. I joined the soccer team, scored a goal in my first game, and ran home pumped. Mom's response? "1 goal? Caleb was captain by your age. Maybe if you practiced more instead of daydreaming." Each time, I'd retreat to my room, replaying her words, wondering if I'd ever measure up or if I was just wired wrong. Caleb saw it too, even from afar. I remember a phone call when I was 12, right after Mom had torn into me about a B+ on a math test. He was already in college, but he rang me up late that night. "Hey, Squirt," he said, his voice crackly over the line. "Mom giving you the 3rd degree again?" I nodded, even though he couldn't see, choking back tears. "Yeah, she said you'd never get a B if you tried harder." He sighed, long and heavy. "Listen, Aubrey, it's not you. Mom's got her own stuff she's dealing with. I got out because I had to. Staying would have crushed me. Promise me you'll keep your head up, okay? Don't let her clip your wings." That call stuck with me, a lifeline in the chaos. But it also stung knowing he'd escaped while I was still in the trenches. The barbs kept coming, escalating from nitpicks to full-on assaults on who I was. By high school, Mom's comments cut deeper, like when I dyed a streak of my hair blue for fun. "You look like a delinquent," she snapped at dinner, fork clattering on her plate. "What will people think? Caleb never pulled stunts like that." I'd bite my lip, the blue streak suddenly a symbol of my rebellion, But inside, I questioned everything. My choices, my worth, wondering if I'd ever break free from that endless loop of not quite measuring up. Little did I know, those early jabs were just the warm-up for the real fireworks to come. Those early jabs Mom threw my way, they were like appetizers before the main course of conflict, ramping up as I hit my teens and started figuring out who I wanted to be. It all boiled down to her impossible standards, this ever-shifting bar I could never quite clear. Take report cards, for instance. They were like battlegrounds. I'd study my butt off, come home with a solid mix of A's, maybe one A- lurking in there. Mom would scan it, her lips pursing, and zero in like a hawk. An A- in history? Caleb aced that class without breaking a sweat. What happened? Did you slack off on the essays? I'd stand there, heart sinking, mumbling something about the teacher being tough. Inside, I'd churn, why can't she see the effort? Am I really that much of a disappointment compared to Caleb or cousin Jenna, who apparently walked on water? The comparisons weren't just academic. They seeped into everything, layering on this subtle undercurrent where Mom's words hinted at her own unfinished business. Like, she'd say things that made me wonder if she was talking about me or herself. One afternoon after school, I was 14, hanging out with my friend group at the mall. We were just goofing around, trying on clothes, when I got home wearing a new pair of ripped jeans I'd bought with my allowance. Mom took one look and exploded. "Those jeans make you look trashy, Aubrey. Why can't you dress like Jenna? She's always so put together." Her voice had this edge, almost wistful, like she was remembering some version of herself she'd left behind. I'd retreat to my room, staring in the mirror, tugging at the denim. Do I look that bad? Or is this about Mom wishing she'd had more chances to style her own life? The doubt gnawed at me, making every choice feel like a test I was failing. Friends were another flashpoint, turning casual hangouts into full-on interrogations. I'd invite someone over, say my buddy Lisa from Computer Club. She was this brainy girl who loved coding games on her old laptop. Mom would chat politely at first, then corner me later. "Lisa seems intense. All that talk about computers, girls like that end up alone. You should spend time with people who'll help you fit in, like Caleb's old crowd." There it was again, that hint of regret in her tone, like she was projecting her own sidelined dreams onto me. I'd defend Lisa in my head. She's smart, Mom, like really innovative, but out loud, I'd just shrug, the words sticking in my throat. Each time I'd question myself. Maybe she's right. Maybe I'm picking the wrong path and it'll leave me isolated just like she warns. The mental tug-of-war left me exhausted, second-guessing friendships that actually made me feel seen. By high school, the fights zeroed in on my future, cranking the tension to 11. I was obsessed with computer science, the way code could build worlds, solve puzzles that seemed impossible. I'd stay up late tinkering with basic programs, feeling this rush when things clicked. But when I mentioned it at dinner one night, Mom scoffed, her fork pausing mid-air. "Tech? That's a man's world, Aubrey. Women get pushed aside there. You should go for something practical, like nursing, helping people, building a family life around it." Her eyes flicked away, and there was that subtle layer again, a bitterness like she was reliving her own choice to drop her marketing gig for us kids. "I gave up a lot to raise you right," she'd add, almost under her breath, making it clear her regrets were the ghost in the room. I almost caved that night, nodding along as she painted this picture of stability in scrubs, tending to patients with a smile. For a split second, I thought, maybe nursing isn't so bad. Safe, reliable, the kind of job Mom approves of. But as I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, that spark for coding flared up. No way was I ditching it. The next day, I secretly applied to tech programs at colleges, my hands shaking as I hit submit on Ohio State's site. It felt like betrayal, but also like claiming something for myself. Dad, meanwhile, was the steady force in the background, plant manager at the factory for 25 years, bringing home a paycheck that kept the roof over our heads. He made enough for Mom to stay home, fussing over our 4-bedroom ranch with its perfect lawn and that kitchen remodel she bragged about at neighborhood barbecues. The house was her trophy, spotless counters and all, a symbol of the life she'd built, or sacrificed for, depending on how you looked at it. Those battles left scars, building this quiet storm inside me. Mom's words weren't just criticism. They were laced with her own what-ifs, making every fight feel personal on levels I couldn't quite grasp yet. But as I pushed toward my dreams in secret, I started wondering if breaking free meant leaving more than just the house behind. Those battles with Mom over my future, they simmered in the background as I dove headfirst into my secret plan, applying to tech programs behind her back. When acceptance letters started rolling in, I felt this electric buzz, like I'd cracked some code that unlocked my own path. Ohio State was my top choice, with its solid computer science track, and landing a spot there felt like a quiet victory. But as graduation day approached, that quiet storm inside me started churning louder, mixing excitement with the dread of how Mom would spin it. The ceremony was a blur of caps and gowns under a sunny May sky in Columbus. I walked across that stage with honors, my diploma in hand, heart pounding as the dean called my name. Aubrey Larson, summa cum laude. Cheers from the crowd, but in my head, I replayed Mom's old scoff about tech being a man's world. Dad clapped loudest, his face beaming with that rare pride he saved for big moments, while Mom sat there with a tight smile, later muttering something about how fancy degrees don't guarantee anything. I pushed it down, focusing on the weight of that paper, proof I'd made it despite the doubts. But even then, the success tasted a bit hollow, like biting into an apple that's all shine and no sweetness. Without her nod of approval, it felt like half a win, leaving me wondering if I'd ever shake that need for validation. Right out of college, I snagged a junior software engineer gig at a mid-sized tech firm in Columbus, the kind of place that built apps for big clients in finance and healthcare. My first day, I sat at my desk, staring at the dual monitors, fingers flying over the keyboard as I debugged my initial assignment. It clicked. The logic, the problem-solving, turning chaos into clean code. Within 6 months, I was handling my own projects, like optimizing an algorithm that shaved processing time by 30% for a key client. They sent a thank you email copying my boss. Aubrey's work is top-notch, reliable, and innovative. Promotions followed. By 24, I was mid-level, leading small teams, earning trust from folks who'd been in the game for decades. One standout was this subplot in my early career, a big win where I led a team to revamp a client's outdated system, rolling it out ahead of schedule. We celebrated with a team lunch, and I couldn't wait to share it at the next family gathering, thinking maybe this time Mom would see it. But family events? They were where the contrast hit like a gut punch, escalating from subtle digs to outright dismissals that amplified the resentment bubbling under my skin. Take Thanksgiving that first year out of college. We gathered at the house, the air thick with turkey and tension. Mom's domain was that 4-bedroom ranch in the suburbs, her pride and joy. She'd remodeled the kitchen a few years back, insisting on granite counters and stainless appliances that gleamed under the recessed lights, always spotless like a showroom. The living room had her designer couches, the backyard her manicured lawn where we'd barbecue in summer. It was her castle, financed by Dad's steady paycheck from the factory, but she ruled it like a queen, every detail a testament to the life she'd curated. I arrived that holiday with news of my first promotion, buzzing to tell them. As we sat around the mahogany dining table, another of her prized pieces, Mom introduced me to Aunt Linda, who'd driven in from Akron. "This is Aubrey," she said, waving a hand my way like I was an afterthought. "She does something with computers." No mention of the degree, the honors, the job that paid my bills and then some. I jumped in, trying to fill the gap. "Actually, I just got promoted, leading projects now, and we nailed this big system upgrade for a client. Mom nodded vaguely, then pivoted. That's nice, dear. But Jenna's nursing job? She's saving lives every day. Computers seem so isolated. It started subtle, that dismissal, but as the evening wore on, it ramped up. When Dad asked about my work, proud as ever, Mom cut in with, "Tech changes so fast, who knows if it'll last? Nursing's stable." By dessert, it was overt. "Don't get too wrapped up in that job, Aubrey. Careers come and go, but family." She trailed off, but the message landed hard. My achievements were footnotes, not headlines. Each gathering chipped away more, that hollow feeling growing. I'd drive home after, replaying the belittling in my mind, the client praises echoing empty without her acknowledgement. Success at work felt real. The high fives from colleagues, the satisfaction of code running smooth. But back in that house, Mom's domain where everything was measured against her invisible yardstick, it all rang false. The resentment built, a slow burn, making me question how long I could keep bridging those worlds before something snapped. That slow burning resentment? It was like a fuse waiting for a spark, and boy, did it come in the form of Dad's health scare 4 years ago. Everything shifted overnight when he got the diagnosis. Prostate cancer? Caught early but aggressive enough to need rounds of chemo and radiation that insurance only half covered. I remember the day he told me, his voice cracking over the phone while I was at my desk debugging code. "It's treatable, kiddo," he said, trying to sound upbeat, but the fear leaked through like static on the line. Bills started flooding in faster than they could handle. Thousands for each session, meds, follow-ups. Dad's factory job had decent benefits, but the copays piled up like snow in a Cleveland winter, burying them under a mountain of debt they couldn't shovel out from. Mom, true to form, dug in her heels against any real changes. "Downsize? Sell the house?" She'd snap when Dad even hinted at it during my visits. "What would the neighbors say? We've built this life. I'm not throwing it away because of some bad luck." Her pride in that ranch house blinded her. She'd wander the kitchen, running her hand over those granite counters like they were armor, refusing to consider part-time work or cutting back on her book club lunches at the country club. "At my age, who'd hire me?" she'd say, her tone laced with that familiar bitterness, as if admitting vulnerability was worse than the cancer itself. Meanwhile, Dad grew quieter, his shoulders slumping under the weight, but he kept clocking in at the plant, pretending everything was fine. I stumbled onto the full extent of their mess by accident during a weekend visit home, about a month after the diagnosis. I'd driven up to check on Dad, pulling into the driveway under a gray autumn sky that matched the mood. The house looked the same, lawn mowed crisp, porch light on, but inside, the air felt heavy. Late that night, I couldn't sleep, so I padded downstairs for water. There was Dad in the den, hunched over the oak desk that had been his since I was a kid, surrounded by a sea of envelopes and statements. His reading glasses slipped down his nose, hands trembling as he sorted through them. "Dad?" I whispered, flipping on the lamp. He jumped, papers scattering like leaves. "Aubrey, honey, go back to bed." But his eyes were red-rimmed, defeated. When I pressed, he broke, admitted they were already 2 months behind on payments, the hospital threatening to halt treatments if they didn't catch up. My chest tightened. Seeing my strong, steady dad reduced to this was like a punch to the gut. How had it gotten this bad so fast? I sat with him for hours that night, the clock ticking softly as we talked. Part of me wanted to march upstairs and confront Mom, lay it all out. The bills, the denial. But I hesitated, picturing her defensive flare-up. Instead, the next morning, after they thought I'd left, I called the hospital billing department from my car in a coffee shop parking lot. "I'd like to set up automatic payments for Tom Larson's account," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. It was $3,000 a month, a massive hit, but my salary could cover it if I tightened my belt. No more eating out, sticking with my beat-up Honda instead of upgrading, skipping vacations for overtime. I considered telling them right then, imagining the relief on Dad's face, maybe even gratitude from Mom. It felt like the right thing, a clean resolution to pull us together. But then I replayed her past dismissals in my head, how she'd twisted into charity she didn't want, making me the villain for interfering. No, better to keep it quiet. Let Dad think his consulting side gig was bridging the gap. It gave me a false sense of control, like I'd fixed it without the drama. That afternoon, I vented to Maya over burgers at our favorite spot in Columbus. She's been my ride or die since college, the one who always calls it like she sees it. "You're doing what?" she said, nearly choking on her fry. "Paying their bills in secret? Aubrey, that's a recipe for disaster. What if they find out? Or worse, what if they don't, and you burn out carrying this alone?" I stirred my soda, staring at the bubbles. She was right. It was a Band-Aid on a bullet wound. But the thought of Dad skipping treatments twisted my insides. Was this love, sacrificing my security for theirs? Or just enabling the mess? I reflected on it driving home, the highway blurring as tears pricked my eyes. Love shouldn't feel this heavy, like I'm drowning to keep them afloat. But in that moment, I couldn't stop. The secret payments became my silent vow, even as they chipped away at my own life, leaving me with ramen dinners and a savings account that echoed empty. Little did I know, those missed red flags were just the beginning of the unraveling. Little did I know, those missed red flags were just the beginning of the unraveling, flickering like warning lights I chose to ignore while the secret payments hummed along in the background. At first, they were subtle. New credit cards popping up in Mom's purse during my visits, shiny plastic peeking out when she'd pay for takeout. "Just for emergencies," she'd say offhand if I glanced too long, her smile too tight, too quick. But the worry started small, a nagging itch. Why more cards when Dad's consulting was supposedly covering things? I'd push it down, telling myself it was nothing, but each time I drove home, that itch grew, turning into a low hum of unease. The evasiveness ramped up next, conversations dodging like shadows. I'd ask Dad how work was holding up, and he'd mumble something vague, "Steady as she goes?" while avoiding my eyes, his fingers drumming the table. Mom was worse. Bring up bills or the house, and she'd pivot hard. "Enough about that. How's your love life? Still flying solo?" The tension thickened with every dodge, like air before a storm, making family dinners feel like tiptoeing on cracking ice. One visit, I spotted a late notice envelope tucked under a stack of mail on the kitchen counter, hospital logo glaring. And when I casually asked, Dad changed the subject to the Browns game, his laugh forced. The worry escalated then, from itch to ache. Were the payments not enough? Was something bigger brewing? But I kept quiet, clinging to the illusion that my secret fix was holding it all together. It all played out in that ranch-style house, Mom's unyielding domain, where every detail screamed control amid the chaos. The single-story sprawl sat on a quiet cul-de-sac, brick facade weathered just enough to feel lived in, with a wraparound porch where Dad used to grill burgers on Sundays. Inside, the kitchen was her crown jewel. Remodeled when I was in high school, with those gleaming granite countertops she'd fought for, stainless steel appliances humming softly, and cabinets stocked with her collection of vintage Pyrex. The living room flowed open, hardwood floors scuffed from years of family traffic, leading to the hallway with our bedrooms. My old room was a time capsule, faded posters on the walls, a desk scarred from homework marathons, and those childhood marks, pencil lines on the kitchen doorframe tracking my growth spurts right next to Caleb's taller ones, stared back like ghosts, measuring not just height, but expectations I never reached. Nostalgia hit hard in those spaces, layering sweet memories with the sting of pain, making detachment feel impossible, yet inevitable. I'd walk the halls, fingers trailing the banister, remembering good times, summers on the porch swing with Dad, him teaching me constellations while fireflies danced, his laugh warm against the cricket chorus. Or baking cookies in that kitchen as a kid, flour dusting the counters, Mom actually smiling when one batch turned out perfect. Rare moments where the house felt like home, not a pressure cooker. But the bad wove through like thorns, arguments echoing off the walls. Me hiding in my room after a report card roast. Tears soaking my pillow as I wondered why love came with so many conditions. One particular visit hinted at deeper cracks. A small thing, really. I was helping Dad fix a leaky faucet in the bathroom. Tools scattered on the tile, when I found an empty whiskey bottle stashed behind the pipes. "Just recycling," he muttered, snatching it away, but his hands shook, eyes darting. That moment escalated my worry to full-blown alarm. The tension wasn't just financial. It was fraying them from the inside. Reflecting on it later, driving away under the streetlights, nostalgia twisted bitter. This house held my roots. The laughter and the bruises, but holding on meant ignoring how it was poisoning us all. How much longer could I pretend the foundation wasn't crumbling? How much longer could I pretend the foundation wasn't crumbling? Even with that question gnawing at me, I kept making those drives back home every other weekend, like clockwork, mostly for Dad. His health was my anchor. The cancer treatments were ongoing, and I needed to see with my own eyes that he was holding up. But the anxiety kicked in hours before I'd hit the highway, a knot twisting in my gut like I'd swallowed a rock. My hands would sweat on the wheel, mind racing through worst-case scenarios. What if today was the day Mom's barbs finally broke me? Or worse, what if Dad looked even more faded? It was like bracing for a storm I knew was coming, every mile marker ratcheting up the dread. One typical Saturday, I pulled into the driveway under a drizzly sky, the ranch house looking smaller somehow, its brick facade dulled by the weather. Dad greeted me at the door with a hug that felt frailer than last time, his once broad shoulders now hunched like he was carrying an invisible load. "Good to see you, kiddo," he said, his smile not quite reaching his eyes, which had this glassy sheen I'd started noticing. We settled in the living room, and I asked about his latest checkup. "Docs say it's stable," he replied, but his voice wavered, and he quickly changed the subject to the neighbor's new fence. That loss of confidence hit me hard. The man who'd commanded a factory floor, barking orders with that booming laugh, now fidgeted with his coffee mug, avoiding details. It was like watching a giant shrink, and it tore at me, fueling my resolve to keep showing up despite the toll. Mom's criticisms had sharpened too, evolving from passive digs to multi-layered jabs that probed deeper, testing my resolve while hinting at her own unresolved frustrations. During dinner that night, her famous pot roast, tender but tasting like cardboard under the tension, she started subtle. I complimented the meal, and she waved it off. "It's nothing special, unlike those fancy takeout places you probably eat at in the city." Internally, I pushed back. "It's not about the food, Mom. It's about connecting." But I smiled through it. Then it layered up when I offered to help clear the table. As I stacked plates, she hovered, re-wiping a fork I'd already cleaned. "You missed a spot, again. If you'd paid more attention growing up, maybe you'd be more thorough." Her tone carried that undercurrent, like she was critiquing her own past choices as much as mine, the thorough life she'd sacrificed for us kids. I bit my tongue, thinking, this isn't about the fork. It's about control. But saying it aloud would have ignited the powder keg. The pattern repeated on my next visit, the tension building like a slow boil. I brought homemade chili, hoping for a neutral ground, but Mom took one spoonful and pursed her lips. "A bit bland. Did you forget the spices? I taught you better, or at least I tried." The barbs stung on multiple levels, surface criticism of my cooking, a deeper jab at my independence, and that subtle self-pity in "I tried," like her regrets were my fault. Inside, I rebelled. "You taught me to doubt myself, not cook." But I murmured an apology, the words tasting sour. Dad, meanwhile, retreated further, excusing himself to check the garage mid-meal, his steps shuffling. Later, I caught him slipping a flask from his jacket pocket in the hallway, taking a quick swig when he thought I wasn't looking. The metallic glint, the sharp scent of whiskey. It was new, or at least newly obvious, a crutch for the confidence cancer and stress had stolen. My heart ached. This wasn't the dad who'd coached my little league team, high-fiving after every play. Caleb called that evening as I sat in my old room, the posters mocking my stalled progress. "Hey, sis, how's the home front?" he asked, his Chicago traffic humming in the background. "Same old," I sighed, venting about Mom's latest and Dad's flask. He paused, then added perspective. "It's getting worse, huh? I saw it starting before I left, Mom's grip tightening as Dad fades. You're not alone in this. I bailed because I couldn't take the enabling anymore. But you're stronger," sticking it out for him. His words layered the fight in my mind, validating my pushback while heightening the drama. Was I enabling too, by swallowing the barbs to stay close? The visits blurred together, the anxiety peaking with each one, Mom's criticisms cutting sharper, Dad's retreats deeper. One evening, as I helped with laundry, she snatched a shirt from my hands. "Fold it properly. Do I have to do everything myself? No wonder you're still single, with that haphazard way." The words hung, a multi-layered gut punch blending everyday nitpick with her regrets about my wasted potential, my internal retort screaming, "This is about your life, not mine." It teased the edge, that hurtful zinger lingering like a storm cloud, begging the question, how much more could I take before it all broke? Mom's latest jab, calling me haphazard and blaming it for my single status, hung in the air like smoke, teasing that breaking point I wasn't ready to face. Instead of snapping back, I kept trying to bridge the gap, pouring energy into gestures I hoped would soften her, maybe even spark a real connection. I was grasping at straws, believing I could fix us with the right gift or outing, but every attempt crashed harder, piling on disappointment that made my sacrifices feel heavier. One crisp October morning, I showed up at the house with a plan, a spa day for Mom, a $400 package at this upscale place in Cleveland with massages, facials, the whole deal. I pictured us laughing, sipping cucumber water, maybe even talking like normal people for once. "Thought we could use some pampering," I said, handing her the gift certificate with a hopeful grin. Her eyes narrowed, like I'd handed her a puzzle with missing pieces. "This must have cost a fortune," she said, voice sharp with suspicion. "What's the catch, Aubrey?" My heart sank, hope flickering. "No catch, Mom. Just thought you'd enjoy it." At the spa, she complained the entire time. The room was too chilly, the therapist rushed. The lavender scent gave her a headache. Driving home, I gripped the wheel, disappointment coiling tight. I'd wanted one good day, one moment where she didn't tear me down. Instead, it felt like I'd thrown money into a void. Why does kindness always feel like a trap with her? I wondered, the rejection stinging deeper than I'd expected. Another try was a fancy brunch at a downtown bistro, all exposed brick and artisanal coffee, the kind of place Mom used to rave about. I booked a corner table, thinking food might loosen her up. When the server brought her eggs Benedict, she poked at it, lips pursed. "Overcooked. For $20, you'd think they'd get it right." I forced a smile, talking up my latest project at work, hoping to shift the mood. "That's nice," she said, barely glancing up, then added, "But don't you get tired of all that screen time? Jenna's out there making a difference as a nurse." The jab landed, layered with that familiar dismissal, and I felt the hollow ache again. My efforts, my life, reduced to background noise. Was I trying to win her love, or just prove I wasn't a failure? The question gnawed as I paid the bill, her suspicion of my kindness. Why was I showing off with fancy meals, cutting deeper than the critique itself? Work wasn't helping either, adding another layer of strain that tied back to the family drain. A big project deadline was looming, a client app overhaul that had my team pulling late nights. Stress was creeping in, missed bugs, tense stand-up meetings, and I caught myself snapping at a coworker over a minor glitch, something I'd never done before. Driving home one night, I realized the constant family tension was bleeding into my job, fraying my focus. I'm carrying them all, I thought, the $3,000 monthly payments flashing in my mind. And for what? A mom who sees every gesture as a power play? It all came crashing down one night at Maya's apartment, sprawled on her couch with takeout pizza and a bottle of wine. She'd seen the bags under my eyes, the way I flinched when my phone buzzed with a text from home. "Spill it, Aubrey," she said, shoving a slice my way. "What's got you looking like you're one bad day from unraveling?" The dam broke. I told her everything. The secret payments, the spa day flop, the brunch disaster, Mom's relentless suspicion. "I've been paying $3,000 a month for Dad's treatments for years," I admitted, voice cracking. "And Mom still treats me like I'm the screw-up." Maya's jaw dropped. Pizza forgotten. "You're what? Aubrey, that's insane. You're killing yourself to save them, and they don't even know? That's not love. It's a one-way street to burnout." I wanted to argue, to say it was for Dad, but her words hit hard. For a fleeting moment, I thought maybe Mom's attitude would soften if she knew. Pictured her hugging me, grateful, a false resolution that warmed me briefly. But then reality crashed in. The spa day, the brunch, her suspicion. It'd backfire, twist into another way I'd failed her. "You need boundaries," Maya pressed, leaning forward. "You're not their ATM or their punching bag. Step back. Let them face their mess. You're enabling this cycle, and it's eating you alive." Her perspective was a gut check, shining a light on the unhealthy dance I'd been stuck in, trying to earn love while bankrolling their denial. As I drove home, her words echoed, stirring a question I wasn't ready to answer. Could I keep pouring myself out when every gesture just brought more pain? As I drove home that night, Maya's words echoing like a loop in my head, that nagging question gnawed deeper. Could I keep pouring myself out when every gesture just brought more pain? But even as the resentment simmered, Mom's attitude toward my success started revealing itself in sharper colors, like cracks widening in a facade I'd long ignored. It wasn't just the dismissals anymore. It was this growing bitterness, rooted in her own shelved dreams, that turned our interactions into a minefield of unspoken regrets. She'd given up a promising marketing job back in the day to raise us, a sacrifice she dangled like a medal or a noose whenever my career came up. "I put everything on hold for you kids," she'd say during phone calls, her voice laced with that undercurrent of what if. At first, it was subtle, woven into casual chats, but it built over time, escalating from offhand comments to pointed refrains that hit like barbs. Every visit or call, she'd circle back to the same tune. "When are you going to settle down, Aubrey? All that work is fine, but a woman's real fulfillment comes from family." It started mild, almost advisory, like at a cousin's wedding where she leaned in during the reception, champagne flute in hand. "See how happy Jenna looks with her husband and kids? Careers are temporary, families forever." I'd nod, forcing a smile. But inside, the resentment flared. My success challenged her choices, a mirror she didn't want to face. The questions ramped up, turning overt as my promotions piled on. After I landed lead on a major app launch, I called home buzzing, only for her to pivot. "That's great, but don't you want more than late nights at a desk? I had dreams too, you know. Gave them up for stability." Her tone sharpened each time, layering accusation with envy, as if my independence mocked her sacrifices. "No one's on their deathbed wishing they'd coded more," she'd add, her words a direct hit at my fancy job, escalating the subtle digs into full-on critiques of my life choices. I started dreading the calls, that constant refrain chipping away, making me question if my path was selfish or just different from hers. It all culminated in an unannounced visit 2 weeks before Dad's birthday, a desperate bid to connect before the anxiety swallowed me whole. I'd grabbed dinner from their favorite Italian spot, lasagna and garlic bread, steam rising from the bags as I let myself in with my old key. The house was quiet, but voices drifted from the kitchen, Mom's sharp and biting. I froze in the hallway, the food growing heavy in my arms. She thinks she's so superior with that tech career and her city apartment, Mom was saying, presumably to Dad. Always flaunting her independence, like it's better than what I chose. The words layered deep, surface mockery of my job, but underneath, her vulnerability peeked through, a twist that hit me sideways. This wasn't just disdain. It was pain, her sacrificed career echoing in every syllable, making my success feel like salt in her wound. Dad's response was muted. "Diane, she's just living her life." But Mom pressed on, her voice rising. "Living her life? Rubbing it in our faces, acting like we're the ones who fell short. I gave up everything for this family, and look at her, child-free, climbing ladders I never got to touch." I analyzed it frozen there, heart pounding. The overt resentment masked her regrets, a reversal where I glimpsed not just the bully, but the woman who'd traded dreams for duty. It humanized her, twisting the knife. Did her bitterness stem from love turned sour, or envy she couldn't admit? The emotional punch left me reeling. I backed out silently, slipping into my car without them knowing I'd been there. I sat in the driveway for 20 minutes, shaking, tears blurring the streetlights. The aftermath crashed over me like waves, anger at her words, sorrow for her hidden pain, and a bone-deep exhaustion from the endless cycle. Driving away, the resentment peaked, overt and raw, leaving me to wonder if that overheard disdain was the final straw, pushing me toward a confrontation I could no longer avoid. Driving away from that unannounced visit, Mom's overheard disdain echoing in my head, I felt the resentment solidify into something sharp, a blade I wasn't sure I could wield yet. But Dad's 60th birthday was looming, and I couldn't skip it, not with his health hanging in the balance. So I steeled myself for the weekend, hoping to keep the peace, but knowing deep down that confrontation was creeping closer, like storm clouds rolling in over Lake Erie. I pulled into the driveway that July Saturday, the familiar ranch house glowing under the summer sun, but the tension hit me before I even stepped out of the car. My overnight bag felt heavier than it should, stuffed with a gift for Dad, a custom leather jacket I'd seen him admire at a store months ago, costing me a month's rent. I'd planned a dinner at his favorite steakhouse, a treat to lift his spirits, but Mom shot it down the second I walked in. "I'm making ribs," she said, barely looking up from chopping onions in her pristine kitchen. "No need to flash your money around." Her tone was clipped, the air already thick with that familiar strain. I swallowed my reply, forcing a nod, but inside, I churned. Why does every gesture get twisted into a jab? Dinner was stilted, the backyard picnic table set with paper plates, citronella candles flickering against mosquitoes. Dad sipped his beer too fast, his eyes dull, while Mom served ribs with a forced smile, her comments landing like pinpricks. "Don't eat so fast, Aubrey. It's not a race." The tension coiled tighter, every bite tasting like cardboard. Gift time came after dinner, and I handed Dad the wrapped box, heart pounding with hope. His face lit up when he peeled back the paper, revealing the jacket's sleek black leather. "Aubrey, this is too much," he said, voice thick, running his fingers over the stitching. "You deserve it, Dad," I replied, catching a rare spark in his eyes. For a moment, it felt like old times, him teaching me to throw a curveball, proud and present. But Mom's gaze sharpened, her voice cutting through. "How much did that set you back? Must be nice to have cash to burn." The question wasn't just curious. It was loaded, layered with that escalating resentment from her own shelved dreams. "It's a gift, Mom," I said, keeping my tone even. "For Dad's big day?" Dad murmured a thanks, but the moment soured, the air heavy with her unspoken accusation. I was showing off, again. The next morning, I woke to the smell of coffee and muffled voices from the den, the door slightly ajar. I crept closer, unable to resist, my pulse quickening as Mom's voice carried. "We can't keep this up, Tom. The hospital's sending shut-off notices. We're out of time." Dad's reply was weary. "What do we do, Diane? Ask Aubrey?" Mom scoffed, venomous. "So she can hold it over us? Miss High and Mighty with her tech money? No way." The words stung, but her vulnerability peeked through again, that twist of her own regrets fueling her rage. My mind raced. They're drowning, and I'm already carrying them. I can't keep pretending this is fine. Steeling myself, I decided to act, not just for them, but to break this cycle of secrecy and denial. At breakfast, I set my coffee down, hands steady despite the storm inside. "I heard you in the den," I said, voice calm but firm. "I know the bills are piling up. I can help. Make a budget, look at payment plans." Mom's face flushed, eyes narrowing like I'd crossed a line. "Eavesdropping now? Spying on us in our own house?" "I was in the kitchen," I countered, heart pounding. "I'm a problem solver at work. Let me help." The argument started calm, but it layered up fast, an escalation loop spiraling out of control. "You think we're failures who need your fancy degree to save us?" Mom snapped, her chair scraping as she stood. "That's not what I meant," I said, louder now. "You're in a hole, and I'm trying to throw you a rope. You've got all the answers, don't you?" She shot back, voice rising. "Little Miss Tech Star, looking down on us." "I'm not looking down," I shouted, the dam breaking. "I've worked my ass off, and I'm offering to help because I care." Dad stared at his plate, silent as ever, and I turned to him, desperate. "Dad, say something." He looked up, eyes tired. "Your mom's upset, Aubrey. Let's cool off." His silence was a gut punch, but then a reversal. He added softly, "She's right, Diane. We're struggling." It was a weak plea, but it fueled Mom's rage. "You're both ganging up on me now?" she yelled. "This is our business, not hers." I couldn't hold it in anymore, the weight of 4 years bursting free. "It's been my business. I've been paying your medical bills, $3,000 a month for 4 years to keep Dad's treatments going." The kitchen froze, forks clattering. Dad's jaw dropped, Mom's eyes widened, then narrowed. "You're lying," she hissed. "I'm not," I said, voice shaking but steady. "I did it so Dad wouldn't suffer, but I'm done being your punching bag." Mom's face contorted, fury overtaking shock. "How dare you! After all we've done, you throw this in our faces? Get out of my house now! Don't come back!" My heart pounded, but her words didn't cut like they used to. They were her truth, not mine. I stood, legs trembling. "Okay," I said quietly, looking at Dad, hoping for something, anything. He looked away, silent again. The finality hit like a wave. "I'm done," I said, voice breaking as I grabbed my bag. "You don't want my help? Fine, you're on your own." Mom's command echoed as I walked out. "Don't you dare show your face here again." The door closing softly behind me, sealing the rift. As I started my car, the house fading in the rear view, I felt the weight of that moment, the climax of years of swallowed pain, and wondered if I'd just lost my family for good. As I drove away from that ranch house, Mom's final command, "Don't you dare show your face here again," rang in my ears. the words fading into the hum of the highway. Numbness settled over me like a fog, my hands gripping the wheel on autopilot as Cleveland's suburbs blurred past. Had I really just lost them? The question looped, but my mind was blank, emotions locked in a deep freeze. I didn't cry, didn't scream, just drove, the road a lifeline keeping me tethered. About an hour in, I pulled into a gas station parking lot, the neon sign flickering in the dusk. I cut the engine, and that's when it hit. A tidal wave of grief and rage, crashing so hard I couldn't breathe. I slumped against the steering wheel, sobs tearing out, raw and jagged. I'd held it together for years, $3,000 a month, 4 years of secrets, all to keep Dad alive, only to be kicked out like I was nothing. The betrayal stung, but worse was the guilt. Had I pushed too far? Broken something that couldn't be fixed? My phone buzzed, snapping me out of the spiral. It was Maya, texting. "You okay? Haven't heard from you." I stared at the screen, fingers trembling, then called her. "I'm in a parking lot off I-71. I managed, voice hoarse. "They threw me out, Maya. I told them about the payments, and Mom lost it." She didn't hesitate. "Stay put. I'm coming." 40 minutes later, her beat-up Toyota pulled up beside me, and she climbed into my passenger seat, arms open. I fell into her hug, crying harder than I had in years. "You didn't deserve that," she said, her voice steady but fierce. "You've been carrying their mess, and they turned on you? That's on them, Aubrey." She handed me a coffee from the gas station, the warmth grounding me as we sat in the dim lot. Her presence was a lifeline, pulling me back from the edge. "You're not alone," she added, squeezing my hand. "But you've got to stop bleeding for them." Her words echoed her earlier advice, but now they landed differently, stirring a flicker of liberation beneath the guilt. Maybe I could let go. Back at my apartment, I couldn't sleep, the fight replaying like a bad movie. I pulled up my bank account, staring at the automatic transfers. $144,000 over 4 years, every cent for Dad's treatments. My savings were a ghost town, my lifestyle stripped to bare bones to keep their heads above water. For a fleeting moment, I considered restarting the payments. Maybe if I kept helping, they'd see my heart, forgive the blow-up. It was a tempting mirage, a false resolution whispering that I could fix this. But then I saw Mom's face, twisted with rage, and Dad's silence, heavy as ever. "No." I logged into the hospital portal and canceled the transfers, my cursor hovering before I clicked confirm. The finality hit like a punch, but also like a release, a weight lifting, leaving me dizzy with both guilt and freedom. I'm done carrying their chaos, I thought, the realization raw but real. I'd given enough. Work was no escape, though. The family fallout bled into everything. Monday's team meeting was a blur. I flubbed a presentation on our app overhaul, my mind stuck on that kitchen showdown. My coworker Jake raised an eyebrow. "You okay, Aubrey? You're usually sharper than this." I brushed it off, but the distraction was real, the emotional drain from home tanking my focus. I'm losing ground because of them, I reflected, the resentment mixing with a new resolve to reclaim my space. Later that week, I met with a financial advisor, a guy named Mark, recommended by a colleague. His office was all glass and calm, a contrast to my churning headspace. I laid it all out, the payments, the years of sacrifice, the blowout. "You've been acting like their personal bank," he said, scanning my statements. "Legally, morally, you have no obligation to keep this up. You've done more than most would." His words were a jolt, cutting through the guilt. "Look at this," he added, pointing to my depleted savings. "You're 28, talented, with a solid career. Redirect that energy to yourself. Build your future, not theirs." I nodded, the idea of no obligation sinking in, both liberating and heavy. I'd been tethered to their survival, but what about mine? The reflection lingered, a mix of relief at stepping back and sorrow for the family I might have lost. As I left Mark's office, the summer air felt lighter, but the question lingered. Could I really walk away, or would the pull of duty drag me back? The road ahead was unclear, but for the first time, I felt the ground shifting under my feet, pointing towards something new. That shift in the ground I felt leaving the advisor's office? It was the first step towards something new, a life where I wasn't tethered to my parents' chaos. The weeks after the blowout were raw, but I was done letting guilt call the shots. I started house hunting in Columbus, craving a space that was mine, not Mom's showroom or Dad's crumbling refuge. My realtor, Sarah, showed me a dozen places, cramped condos, overpriced lofts, until I found a cozy 2-bedroom bungalow in Clintonville. Hardwood floors creaked underfoot, sunlight poured through big windows, and the backyard had a scrappy garden I could already see myself tending. I signed the papers a month later, my hands shaking with excitement and nerves. Moving in, unpacking boxes to the hum of a new playlist, I felt a spark of freedom. This is mine, I thought, hanging a framed photo from a team trip to Seattle. No expectations, no minefields, just a fresh start. But the guilt lingered, a quiet whisper. Was I abandoning them for good? Therapy became my anchor. I found Dr. Ellis through a coworker's recommendation, a no-nonsense woman with a warm smile and a knack for cutting through the fog. Our first session in her cozy office with mismatched cushions, I spilled everything: the payments, Mom's rage, Dad's silence. "You've been enabling a toxic cycle," she said, jotting notes, "not just with the money, but by absorbing their dysfunction." She leaned forward, her voice steady. "When you hid those payments, you protected them from reality, but also yourself from their rejection. Why do you think you kept it secret?" I froze, the question slicing deep. "I thought it'd make them love me," I admitted, voice small. She nodded. "That's the cycle, seeking approval from someone who withholds it. You're allowed to stop." Her examples hit home. She described a patient who'd stayed in a draining marriage, chasing validation, only to burn out. "Sound familiar?" she asked. It did, too much. Each session peeled back layers, helping me see how Mom's barbs and Dad's passivity had wired me to equate love with sacrifice. The guilt was a beast, though, clawing at me even as life improved. I threw myself into work, nailing a new project that earned a shout-out from the CEO in a company-wide email. I started running again, looping through my new neighborhood, the crisp fall air clearing my head. My savings crept back up, now that the $3,000 monthly drain was gone. But at night, staring at the ceiling, I'd replay Mom's final scream, "Don't come back," and wonder if I'd failed them. Dr. Ellis helped reframe it. "Guilt's a signal, not a verdict. You're not responsible for their choices." Slowly, I leaned into the liberation, cooking for myself, hosting Maya for game nights, building a life that felt like mine. The bungalow became my sanctuary, each small choice: new curtains, a coffee maker, proof I could thrive without their approval. 3 months after the blowout, my phone buzzed late one night. Dad's name flashed on the screen, and my stomach flipped. I almost let it go to voicemail, but curiosity won. "Aubrey?" His voice was rough, like he'd been crying. "I got the hospital statements, all of them, going back years. You paid everything?" The truth was out, no turning back. "Yeah, Dad," I said, heart pounding. 4 years, $144,000. For you." Silence stretched. Then he choked out. "I had no idea. I thought my consulting covered it." His denial cracked, twisting into shame as he spoke. I'm so sorry, kiddo. Your mom, she didn't know either. We've been a mess, and you carried it. I swallowed hard, tears pricking. Why didn't you tell us? He asked, voice breaking. I was scared you'd hate me for it, I admitted, the words heavy with years of fear. He sighed, long and shaky. We need to talk, all of us. Can you meet us at the cafe on Main Street tomorrow? Noon? The request hit like a jolt, an ambush maybe, but also a chance. I'll think about it, I said, keeping my guard up. As we hung up, his plea lingered, layered with regret I hadn't expected. My mind spun. Was this a step toward healing or a trap back into the cycle? I stood in my new kitchen, the quiet of my bungalow wrapping around me, and realized I'd have to face them to find out. The quiet of my bungalow wrapped around me as Dad's voice faded from the call. His plea for a cafe meeting hanging in the air like a dare. My first instinct was to say no, protect the fragile peace I'd built. But curiosity and a flicker of hope tugged harder. I spent the morning pacing, coffee going cold, weighing the risk of another blowout against the chance for something better. By 11:30, I was driving to the cafe on Main Street, heart thumping like a bass line. The place was cozy, all wooden tables and chalkboard menus, but as I walked in, I froze. Dad wasn't alone. Mom sat beside him, her posture stiff, eyes locked on her coffee mug. An ambush. My stomach twisted, skepticism flaring. Was this her idea or his? I slid into the booth, bracing for round 2. Mom spoke first, voice low, almost rehearsed. Aubrey, I'm sorry for what I said that day. Kicking you out was wrong. Her words caught me off guard, layered with sincerity but tinged with something else. Pride, maybe, or discomfort. I stayed quiet, analyzing the apology's depth. Was she sorry for the pain, or just caught out by the truth? When your dad told me about the payments, she continued, eyes flicking up, I was floored. 4 years, all that money? I didn't know. Her voice cracked, and for a moment I saw vulnerability, a woman grappling with her own failures. But my guard stayed up. You didn't know because I didn't tell you, I said evenly. I was afraid you'd turn it against me, like everything else. She flinched, and Dad reached for her hand, his own trembling. The talk turned practical, a small relief. We're selling the house, Dad said, his tone steadier now. Downsizing to a condo. The hospital's working with us on a payment plan. Mom nodded, her jaw tight. I'm looking for work, she added, almost defensive. Retail, maybe. It's time I pulled my weight. I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. She'd clung to that house like a lifeline. It's a start, I said, keeping my voice neutral. But I'm not your bank anymore. I need boundaries. The words felt like laying bricks, solid and final. Mom's eyes narrowed briefly, a flash of her old resentment, but she nodded, a small setback in the moment, a flicker of the old cycle trying to pull me back. I pushed through, heart pounding. I did it for Dad, but I can't keep fixing your lives. Dad's eyes welled up and Mom's softened, just enough to hint at progress. 6 months later, the landscape had shifted, like spring breaking through a long winter. Mom landed a job, not just retail, but a manager role at a boutique, a plot twist that stunned me. She'd leveraged her old marketing skills, charming her way up, and when Caleb told me she'd gotten a raise, I almost dropped my phone. She's actually proud of it, he said, chuckling. Never thought I'd see the day. Dad was in remission, his confidence creeping back, though the flask was still a shadow we didn't discuss. They'd moved into a tidy condo, no granite counters, but enough for them. I kept up therapy with Dr. Ellis, unpacking the guilt that lingered like a stubborn stain. You're rewriting your story, she said in one session, her smile warm. Choosing yourself isn't betrayal, it's growth. My own life bloomed. My bungalow felt like home, work projects earned me a promotion, and I even started dating, small steps toward a life untethered from their chaos. Relations weren't perfect. There were setbacks. A Christmas call turned tense when Mom hinted I should visit more, but I held firm. When we're ready, on equal terms. Caleb mediated, hosting a family Zoom that felt stilted but civil, a sign of progress through the friction. The layers of Mom's apologies deepened over time, her texts, short, awkward, showing effort. Saw a coding book at the store, thought of you. It wasn't love bombing, but it was something, a crack in the wall we'd built. Looking back, standing in my garden with dirt under my nails, I realized healing wasn't a straight line. I'd carried their weight for years, but setting boundaries gave me back my life. If you're stuck in a cycle, feeling like love means sacrifice, know this: you can step away without losing yourself. You're enough, just as you are. And if this story hit home, like, comment, and share, then subscribe and watch the next one on our channel. There's more to come, and I'm betting it'll resonate just as deep.